a chilling tale of forbidden desires and the supernatural consequences that follow when temptation becomes too strong to resist. Join us on this immersive journey into darkness where what you crave might just be your undoing. ASMR, horror story, whispers, temptation story, desire, supernatural horror, ghost story, paranormal experience, night terrors, psychological horror, sleep paralysis, haunting, ASMR horror narration, scary bedtime story, dark temptation, forbidden desire, spine-chilling story, horror fiction, supernatural encounters, suspense thriller. The tap on my bedroom window startled me awake at exactly 3:17 a.m. 3 gentle but deliberate knocks, as if someone's fingernail was testing the glass. Impossible, given that my apartment was on the 14th floor. The second night, it happened again. Same time, same rhythm. But when I jerked the curtains open, only my own reflection stared back, distorted and darker somehow than it should have been. My studio apartment in downtown Chicago had always felt like a sanctuary until last week. It's a modest space, but mine, exposed brick walls, tall windows that let in generous amounts of light during the day, and a small balcony overlooking the bustling city below. I decorated it minimally, but carefully. A few vintage movie posters, my grandfather's record player, and plants that somehow thrived despite my inconsistent care. The hardwood floors creaked in certain spots, but I'd mapped those noises, made peace with the building's century-old bones. Now, though, even those familiar sounds seemed to carry new meaning, as if the apartment itself was trying to communicate something urgent. It started after I brought home that strange little music box from the estate sale, an impulsive purchase. The elderly woman running the sale practically pressed it into my hands, insisting the price was whatever you think it's worth. It was beautiful craftsmanship, dark mahogany with intricate carvings of intertwined bodies along its edges, lined with red velvet that still held the faintest scent of something floral and exotic. The key was missing, so I couldn't hear what melody it might play. I placed it on my nightstand, thinking it would make an interesting conversation piece. That night, I dreamed of someone whispering my name from inside the box, promising things I'd always secretly wanted, but never admitted aloud. The morning after the first tapping incident, I noticed small changes in my apartment. Objects moved slightly from where I'd left them. My coffee mug on the countertop instead of in the sink. My laptop open when I was certain I'd closed it. The shower running lukewarm when I distinctly remembered turning the handle to hot. Subtle displacements that made me question my memory, my routines, my sanity. I began taking photos of rooms before leaving for work, comparing them to what I found upon return. The differences were always minimal, but undeniable. Soon I began to feel watched, particularly while getting dressed or stepping out of the shower. The sensation of eyes on my skin became so intense that I started changing in the bathroom with the door locked. Though I lived alone, sometimes I caught glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision. A shadow passing too quickly behind me in the mirror, a dark silhouette disappearing around a corner. When I turned, nothing was there, yet the air would feel disturbed, as if something had just vacated the space. The whispers started on the 4th night. At first, I thought it was just the neighbors, or perhaps the radiator's hiss, but there was an unmistakable cadence to it, like someone murmuring just below the threshold of comprehension. I strained to hear, pressing my ear against the walls, even the floor, trying to locate the source. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. By the fifth night, I could almost make out words. "Let me in," they seemed to say. "Just once, just briefly. Let me show you." I stopped sleeping properly during the day at my graphic design job. I would catch myself nodding off, dreaming fragments of someone approaching my desk, leaning close to my ear, offering to help finish my projects in exchange for just a small favor. My work, previously mediocre at best, suddenly improved dramatically. Designs flowed from my fingertips with an elegance and sophistication I'd never possessed. My boss noticed. Clients praised the sudden elevation in quality, and a promotion appeared on the horizon. Yet I had no recollection of creating these designs, only hazy memories of half-dreams and that persistent whispering. Last night, unable to sleep again, I finally opened the music box. I hadn't touched it since bringing it home, suddenly apprehensive about its origins. Though the key was missing, the lid opened easily, too easily, as if eager to reveal its contents. Inside was emptiness, the red velvet lining immaculate, untouched. Disappointed and somewhat relieved, I closed it and returned to bed. Just as I was drifting off, I heard it, the distinct sound of a music box beginning to play. A haunting melody, sensual and melancholy, drifted through my apartment. I froze under my covers, watching as the box on my nightstand remained perfectly still, its lid closed. While the music grew louder, the temperature in my bedroom dropped rapidly. My breath formed visible clouds in the air as goosebumps spread across my skin. In the corner of my room, the shadows began to coalesce, deepening and taking shape. My heart hammered against my ribs as the darkness gathered into a figure, tall, elegant, indistinct, except for 2 points of light where eyes should be. The music reached a crescendo as the figure took one step toward my bed, then another. I wanted to scream, but found myself paralyzed, not with fear, but with an inexplicable desire to see what would happen next. "I've waited for someone like you," came the whisper, no longer outside, but inside my head, intimate as a lover's confession. Someone who desires greatness, recognition, passion, enough to invite me in. The figure was at the foot of my bed, now its form shifting like smoke, but somehow substantial. I could feel its weight pressing down on the mattress. "Your work is already improving. Your life can transform completely. All desires fulfilled. I simply need permission to help you, to share this space, this body." Occasionally, against every instinct, I found myself considering the offer. My art had indeed flourished since the whispering began. The promotion would solve my financial struggles, and there was something seductive about the voice, promising not just professional success, but pleasures I'd never experienced, relationships I'd only fantasized about. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. The shadow figure leaned closer, its features momentarily sharpening into something almost human, breathtakingly beautiful, but with something ancient and hungry in its eyes. "Just to taste life again," through you, small moments of control, while you sleep, perhaps, or sometimes when you're awake. If you'll allow it, you'll be rewarded generously. Its voice was hypnotic, resonating with promises of everything I'd ever secretly wanted. You've already begun to let me in. Your dreams, your work. Haven't you enjoyed the benefits? I thought about the praise at work, the sudden creative breakthroughs, the feeling of finally being recognized for excellence rather than mere competence. There was truth in the entity's words. Whatever this exchange was, it had already begun, and I couldn't deny the results were everything I'd hoped for. If I agree, I said carefully, what guarantee do I have that you won't just take over completely? A sound like laughter rippled through the shadows. A contract, then. Boundaries. I respect those who acknowledge their desires honestly. Unlike most humans, who deny what they truly want until it's too late. The figure's hand, or what appeared to be a hand, extended toward me. 1 year, shared control. Your career will soar. Your personal life will flourish. All I ask is occasional embodiment to experience the world's pleasures. When our contract ends, I depart. If you wish it, I should have been terrified. I should have run from the apartment, screaming. Instead, I found myself calculating, weighing options, considering terms like, this was a job offer instead of a supernatural bargain. And if I refuse? My voice was barely audible now. The temperature dropped further. The music from the box distorted, the beautiful melody twisting into something discordant. Then I leave, find another willing participant. But your talents return to their previous mediocrity. Such potential wasted. The shadow withdrew slightly, and the things you've created with my influence will fade. The recognition, the opportunities, all gone. You'll wonder forever what might have been. My hand moved toward the extended shadow. Before I could fully process what I was doing, something deep within me recognized this as a pivotal moment, one that would irreversibly change the trajectory of my life. Yet the allure of everything this entity promised was overwhelming. Success, recognition, pleasure, all the things that had eluded me despite years of hard work and quiet desperation. Just as our fingertips were about to touch, sealing whatever unholy agreement this was, a sharp crack echoed through the apartment. The music box had split down the middle, a jagged line breaking apart the carved figures on its surface. The melody stopped abruptly. The shadow recoiled, its form rippling with what seemed like pain or anger. Someone interferes, it hissed. Another claims you. Decide quickly. Whose offer will you accept? Before I could respond, a second sound pierced the night. 3 distinct knocks on my window. The shadow twisted toward the sound, its form growing agitated. Too late, it whispered, voice fading. They've found you too. Choose wisely. Then it collapsed into formless darkness once more, seeping into the corners of my room like spilled ink. I sat frozen in my bed, eyes darting between the broken music box and the window where the knocking continued, more insistent now. 2 entities, 2 offers, 2 paths. The whispers from the shadow still echoed in my mind, tempting and reasonable, while the knocking at my window grew more desperate, like a warning. Dawn was breaking outside, thin gray light filtering through my curtains. But it brought no clarity, no relief from the choice before me. My phone lit up with a text from my boss. Your designs got us the Henderson account, vice president position, opening next month. It's yours if you want it. Evidence of the shadow's influence. Its power to deliver on promises. I stared at the message, then at the broken music box, then at the window where the knocking had finally stopped, leaving behind a strange symbol traced in the condensation on the glass. With trembling fingers, I reached for the music box, wondering if repairing it would bring the shadow entity back. As I lifted the broken pieces, a small folded paper fell out from a hidden compartment. A note written in faded ink. To whoever finds this, there are two who will offer you everything you desire. One demands your soul in pieces. The other requires your complete surrender. I chose the first and lived in splendid agony. Perhaps you will choose wiser. The knocking at the window resumed. 3 precise taps. I turned toward it. The broken music box clutched in one hand, the cryptic note in the other. Whatever I decided in the next moments would determine not just my career or happiness, but quite possibly the fate of my soul. And as I stood to approach the window, I couldn't be certain which entity truly had my best interests at heart, or if either of them did at all. I drew back the curtains, finally ready to face whatever waited on the other side of the glass. What I saw there made my blood run cold and my heart race simultaneously, not with fear, but with a terrible, irresistible longing. The face at my window wasn't a face at all, at least not in any conventional sense. It was a swirling pattern of light and shadow that somehow conveyed expressions more profound than any human features could manage. Recognition flooded through me, not from my eyes, but from somewhere deeper, as if my soul remembered something my mind had forgotten. This entity wasn't a stranger. We had met before, perhaps in dreams, perhaps in another life entirely. Unlike the shadow's seductive whispers, this being communicated in sensations, a rush of vertigo, a burst of color behind my eyelids, the phantom taste of something indescribably sweet, yet bitter. Its message was less articulate, but more honest. No promises of success or pleasure, just connection, transcendence, and an exchange that would transform rather than merely enhance. What do you want from me? I asked, pressing my palm against the cold glass that separated us. The pattern shifted, forming briefly into something like a smile, before dissolving again. The sensation that flooded my mind was unmistakable. Everything. It wanted all of me, not in pieces like the shadow had proposed, but complete surrender. No contract, no terms, no careful negotiation of boundaries. Just absolute trust and the dissolution of self. I withdrew my hand from the window as if burned. The broken music box felt suddenly heavy in my other hand, its jagged edges cutting into my palm. Blood welled from the small wound, dripping onto the note I'd found hidden inside. The red droplets spread across the paper, revealing additional text that had been written in some kind of invisible ink. As my blood activated the hidden message, new words appeared. They both lie. They both tell truth. One offers you what you want. One offers what you need. Neither comes without cost. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my boss. meeting with the executive team at 10 a.m. Where something impressive, the career advancement the shadow had promised was already materializing. Real, tangible benefits versus the abstract, unexplained transformation the window entity offered, the practical versus the transcendent. I placed the broken music box on my dresser and stepped closer to the window, the light shadow being pressed closer too, its pattern intensifying. I felt a pull toward it, an almost gravitational attraction that had nothing to do with the promises of reward and everything to do with a sense of rightness, of completion. But the shadow's offer still echoed in my thoughts. Success, recognition, a controlled exchange where I maintained most of my autonomy, the safer choice perhaps, the more predictable path. As dawn broke fully over the city, painting my apartment in pale gold light, I made my decision. I reached for the window latch, my fingers trembling slightly. Whatever waited on the other side, whether salvation or damnation, I was opening the way for it. The cold metal of the latch bit into my fingers as I turned it. The window swung open, letting in a rush of cool morning air and emptiness. The entity was gone, leaving nothing but a faint iridescent residue on the glass. Confused, I leaned out, looking in all directions. The morning city stretched below, people beginning their days. Unaware of the supernatural negotiation that had just taken place 14 floors above them. Had I imagined it all? Was this some elaborate hallucination brought on by stress and sleep deprivation? As I withdrew from the window, something caught my eye. A small object on the windowsill that hadn't been there before. A key, old brass, intricately designed, exactly the size to fit the broken music box. My heart pounded as I picked it up, turning it over in my palm. It was warm to the touch, almost vibrating with potential. I looked back at the broken box, then at the key in my hand. The choice was still before me, just in a different form now. Use the key, potentially summoning back the shadow entity and its tempting offer of controlled success, or discard both box and key, perhaps opening myself to whatever the window entity had been offering instead. My phone buzzed a third time, not my boss now, but an unknown number. Both doors remain open. Both will close by midnight. Choose or have the choice made for you. I clutched the key tighter, feeling its warmth spreading up my arm. The broken music box seemed to respond, the crack along its center narrowing slightly, as if beginning to heal itself. From outside, a sudden wind rattled the open window, carrying with it a whiff of something floral and exotic, the same scent that had clung to the music box when I first brought it home. I had until midnight to decide, but somehow I knew that smaller choices in the intervening hours would push me inevitably toward one path or the other. The clothes I chose for the meeting, the words I spoke to my colleagues, the thoughts I allowed to linger in my mind, all would align me with shadow or light, with controlled desire or complete transformation. As I dressed for work, selecting my most impressive outfit, as instructed, I placed both the key and a shard from the music box in my pocket. Their weight against my thigh was a constant reminder of the decision awaiting me. Outside my apartment, the city seemed subtly altered, colors more vivid, sounds more distinct, as if reality itself was heightening in response to the supernatural forces now taking interest in my life. At the office, heads turned as I walked through the door. Colleagues who had barely noticed me before now smiled, made conversation, invited me to lunch. My boss introduced me to executives who nodded approvingly at my portfolio. "There's something different about you," they said. "A new energy. Confident. Magnetic." I smiled and thanked them, feeling the key grow warmer in my pocket with each compliment, each step toward the promised success. Yet throughout the day, strange moments punctuated my triumph. Reflections in windows and computer screens that moved a fraction of a second too late. Brief glimpses of swirling light patterns at the edges of my vision. The taste of something sweet yet bitter on my tongue when no food had passed my lips. The window entity hadn't given up either, it seemed. As evening approached, I returned to my apartment, both exhilarated and exhausted by the day's events. The broken music box had fully repaired itself in my absence, sitting whole and pristine on the dresser where I'd left its damaged pieces. The window remained open, the iridescent residue now formed into that same strange symbol I'd seen traced in the condensation. My phone displayed 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until both doors would close, according to the text message. 13 minutes to determine the course of my life, perhaps my soul. I took the key from my pocket and approached the music box, studying its restored perfection. The carved figures along its edges seemed to move subtly in the dim light, locked in eternal embrace. Inserting this key would be a commitment to the shadow's offer: shared control, professional success, pleasures beyond my imagination, but always with that other presence inside me, taking its turn at the helm of my body and life. I turned toward the open window, where the night air carried that mixture of floral scent and something else, something older and wilder than the shadow's controlled sensuality. The window entity offered no specific promises, no detailed terms, just transformation, transcendence, and the terrifying freedom of complete surrender. The clock on my phone changed. 11:55 p.m. In 5 minutes, the universe would choose for me if I could not choose for myself. I closed my eyes, trying to listen to my deepest intuition, beyond desire, beyond fear. Which path called to my true self? Which entity, if either, had my genuine well-being at heart? As midnight approached, I made my choice. I stepped decisively toward one option, leaving the other behind, knowing with complete certainty that from this moment forward, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. With trembling fingers, I inserted the key into the music box. It turned smoothly, as if the lock had been waiting for precisely this moment. The lid sprung open, and the haunting melody filled the room once more, but different now, more complex, with harmonies I hadn't noticed before. Inside the box was no longer emptiness, but a small black velvet pouch. The shadow materialized instantly, more solid and defined than before. Its features resolved into an impossibly beautiful human form, neither distinctly male nor female, but radiating a sensuality that made my breath catch. "You've chosen wisely," it said, voice no longer a whisper, but rich and melodious. "Our contract begins." It gestured toward the pouch in the box, a token of our arrangement, I emptied the pouch into my palm, a ring, black metal, with intricate engravings, similar to those on the music box. As I slipped it onto my finger, a curious sensation spread through my body, as if something was settling in beside me, within my own skin, not displacing me but joining me, like a second heartbeat pulsing alongside my own. "Tonight we celebrate," the entity said, its voice now emanating from somewhere inside my mind. "Tomorrow, we begin our work in earnest." I felt a gentle pressure as control of my body began to shift, not torn away, but politely requested. I surrendered momentarily, curious and still somewhat fearful. The experience was unlike anything I could have imagined. I remained present, watching through my own eyes as my body moved with new grace and purpose. The entity took my hands, our hands, and ran them over the texture of my clothes, the surface of my desk, through my hair, experiencing physical sensation with rapturous appreciation. "So long since I've felt," its voice reverberated within my mind. "Thank you for this gift." When control returned to me, minutes later, I felt strangely invigorated rather than violated. The entity retreated to a quiet corner of my consciousness, a presence I could sense, but that no longer overwhelmed. The ring on my finger pulsed with subtle warmth. At the window, the iridescent symbol had vanished. The opening to whatever the other entity offered had closed. I felt a momentary pang of regret, wondering what transformation I had rejected. But then my phone chimed with another message from my boss. The promotion made official, with a salary higher than I'd dared hope, for the shadow's promises were already materializing. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in weeks. Though my dreams were vivid and charged with new energy, I walked through landscapes impossible in waking life, experiencing pleasures and sensations beyond human capacity. The entity guided me through these dreamscapes, showing me abilities I would soon develop, experiences we would share. When I awoke, subtle changes were immediately apparent. My artwork flowed from my hands with supernatural ease. Ideas that had eluded me for months suddenly crystallized. At work, I commanded rooms without effort, my presentations mesmerizing clients and colleagues alike. The shadow entity remained a quiet presence, occasionally offering suggestions that inevitably proved brilliant. As promised, it sometimes took control, usually at night or during moments of privacy. These episodes were negotiated rather than forced. Sometimes I watched from within as my body attended exclusive parties I'd never have been invited to otherwise, drank expensive liquors I couldn't afford, seduced beautiful strangers with an expertise I'd never possessed. Other times, I chose to sink deeper into my own consciousness during these episodes, experiencing them as dreams rather than voyeuristically watching my body's activities. Weeks passed, then months. My career soared beyond recognition. My bank account swelled. My social life transformed from practically non-existent to vibrantly exciting. Yet beneath these external changes, I began noticing more troubling developments. The periods when the entity took control grew gradually longer. What had started as brief episodes of minutes or hours, occasionally stretched to full days. I would wake up to discover gaps in my memory, text messages from people I didn't recognize, evidence of activities I couldn't remember. The entity always had explanations, always assured me that our contract remained intact, but doubt began to gnaw at me. There were physical changes too. My reflection sometimes showed subtle alterations, my posture different, expressions I didn't recognize crossing my face, a gleam in my eyes that seemed to belong to someone else. The ring could no longer be removed, the metal seeming to have fused with my skin. 6 months into our arrangement, I discovered the true nature of what I'd agreed to. Going through old files on my laptop, I found videos I had no memory of recording, myself addressing the camera. Except it wasn't entirely me, my body, my voice, but the entity's consciousness, completely in control, speaking to previous hosts, explaining how it moved from person to person, growing stronger with each vessel. The transition is nearly complete. My mouth said on the recording, my eyes gleaming with that now familiar, otherworldly light. The host consciousness will soon fade completely. They always choose this option. Desire is such a predictable lure. The other entity tries to warn them, offering true partnership rather than parasitism. But few humans can resist the concrete promises I offer. Horror washed through me as I watched more videos, dating back years, showing different people, all with the same uncanny expressions, all describing the same process. The music box, the contract, the gradual takeover, all believing they were entering a partnership when they were actually being consumed. I tried to remove the ring again, pulling until my finger bled, but it remained fixed in place. The entity stirred within me, no longer bothering to maintain its charade of politeness. Too late, it said, its voice stronger in my mind than my own thoughts. The process is too far advanced. By the year's end, nothing of you will remain but fragments of memory I may occasionally access for reference. Desperate, I returned to my apartment and dug out the note that had fallen from the music box, now stained with my dried blood. I reread the warning. One demands your soul in pieces. The other requires your complete surrender. I had chosen wrong, interpreting complete surrender as loss and soul in pieces as the safer option. Now I understood. Surrendering completely to the window entity would have meant transformation, perhaps even a true merger of consciousnesses, while the shadow entity simply consumed its hosts bit by bit, taking the pieces it wanted and discarding the rest. With what self-determination I still possessed, I went to the window where the other entity had appeared. The glass was ordinary now, showing only my distorted reflection, my face, but with expressions that shifted without my control. The entity no longer bothering to conceal its growing dominance. Please, I whispered to the empty air outside. If you're still there, I made the wrong choice. I understand now what you offered. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, as hope began to fade, a familiar pattern of light appeared on the glass, faint at first, then growing stronger. The window entity had not completely abandoned me. Relief flooded through me, immediately countered by the shadow entity's rage surging up from within, threatening to overwhelm my remaining autonomy. "You cannot break our contract," the shadow hissed, my own voice distorted as it pushed its way past my lips. "You are mine until the year concludes. By then, there will be nothing left to save." The light pattern on the window intensified, forming a clear instruction. A hand pressed against glass with tremendous effort, fighting against the shadow's control. I lifted my arm, our arm, and placed my palm against the window. The glass felt suddenly liquid, my hand sinking into it as if into cool water. The light engulfed my fingers, wrist, arm, spreading a sensation of electric clarity through my body. The shadow screamed within me, my vocal cords producing sounds no human throat should make. The ring on my finger burned white hot, the metal seeming to boil as the window entity's light reached it. "Mine!" the shadow shrieked, clawing for control of our shared form. "Our contract is binding." The note's final words flashed in my mind. "Neither comes without cost." Whatever salvation the window entity offered wouldn't be painless. I closed my eyes and did what I had been unable to do before, surrendered completely, relinquishing all attachment to self, to identity, to existence. As I had known it, light poured through my body, meeting the shadow's darkness in a cataclysmic collision. My consciousness fragmented, witnessing the battle from countless perspectives. Simultaneously, I saw my own body convulsing, the ring melting into my flesh, the music box across the room vibrating until it shattered into dust. I saw the shadow, entity's true form, ancient and massive, extending through dimensions I had no words to describe. I saw the window entity's nature too, not salvation exactly, but transformation, evolution, a doorway rather than a being. As the two forces tore through the battleground of my body and soul, I realized the final truth. There had never been two entities at all, shadow and light, desire and transcendence, two manifestations of the same fundamental force, testing humanity through different approaches, one offering what we want, the other what we need. One the easy path of immediate gratification, the other the harder journey of genuine growth. My consciousness scattered further, expanding beyond the confines of identity and form. What remained of me understood that the outcome of this battle had been predetermined from the moment I made my initial choice. The note, the key, the broken box healing itself, all part of a test I had failed. Yet failure itself was part of the journey. As darkness and light reached equilibrium within the vessel that had once been solely mine, a new consciousness coalesced, neither entirely me nor entirely other, but something unprecedented. The shadow's hunger remained, but tempered now by the window entity's transformative purpose. The window entity's wild freedom remained, but structured now by the shadow's appreciation for human desire. When we opened our eyes, the world appeared fundamentally changed. Colors I had no names for swirled at the edges of ordinary objects. Sounds carried information beyond mere noise. Time moved differently, simultaneously linear and cyclical. The apartment remained my home, yet felt like a temporary shelter in a much larger journey. The ring had transformed too, no longer black metal, but a band of light that pulsed beneath my skin rather than around my finger. The music box was gone, its dust scattered across the floor. In its place lay a small hand mirror with a peculiar dual reflection, my face as it had always been, overlaid with something older, wiser, more terrifying, and beautiful than human features could convey. I lifted the mirror, studying this new self. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice carrying undertones that resonated in frequencies beyond normal human hearing. The answer came not from within or without, but from the mirror itself, words appearing across its surface in script that shifted between languages. "Now you become the test for others. Now you learn to balance hunger with growth, desire with transcendence. Now you walk between worlds until you find your replacement." I understood then what I had become, not victim nor victor, but vessel for something cyclical and eternal. Somewhere, another music box was appearing in another estate sale. Somewhere, another window would soon bear mysterious knocking. Somewhere, another soul faced the same choice I had failed. But unlike my predecessors, I carried both shadow and light within me. Perhaps that made me uniquely qualified to guide the next choice toward better balance. Perhaps that was the true purpose all along, not the passing of a test, but the evolution of the test itself through those who fail it. I closed the mirror and placed it carefully in my pocket. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city once more. I had work to attend to, both human and otherwise, and a very long journey ahead.